Welcome to Target Market Insights, the Multifamily and Marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the Multifamily and Marketing Show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, please do me a favor and leave us that 5-star rating and review. And if this is your first time listening or you just haven't done it already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to Curtis May. Today's guest is Curtis May, the host of the Practical Wealth Show podcast and creator and owner of Practical Wealth Advisors. Curtis has been planning for individuals for more than 35 years, and he is passionate about helping the clients that he serves to save money and live the very best life they can right now. The primary focus of his financial planning firm is to help individuals and families become financially free by following the principles of wealth creation that have endured for centuries around the world. Let's welcome to the show, Curtis May.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
excited to be here.
Absolutely. Curtis, I went over your bio at a high level. Why don't you take 1 or 2 minutes and give us a little bit more context on your background?
Well, I realized in college the NBA wasn't looking for 5'11" shooting guards. So I got in the financial services business probably in 1985. And with the company that if I said it, you'd know it, but I was evangelical about buy term investor difference. And then in 1999, I read a little book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that I realized what he was talking about, what I was doing was different. I didn't really understand it, but it sent me on a quest to really figure out what I call the truth when it comes to money. And now I call myself a proponent of prosperity economics or principles-based planning, which is basically most people don't deal with principles, right? Most people are tactical. Most advisors are tactical. They deal with products. Some people have a strategy, but most people don't have a principles. And a principle is you want to have a set of things that you do that order your financial choices and and control what you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I call your money rules. And so that starts with your principles. So it's like principle, strategy, and then tactics. So I'm passionate about financial education and really teaching people to be in control of their money and stop advocating control. So that's kind of our bio. And I'm a third generation business owner. My family,
Okay.
I always said, well, I never got that go to school, get a good job taught. My dad told me I heard from the time I was 8, you never make any money, work for somebody else, boy.
No, that's great to hear. And I'm happy that you realized the market for that 5'11" shooting guard wasn't that hot. So you didn't keep pursuing that and tried something else. You mentioned prosperity
make a living at it becomes your hobby. Somebody told me so.
There you go. You mentioned prosperity economics and went over kind of quick. Would you mind just giving us a little bit more context on that?
So it's kind of the opposite of what I call typical financial advice, which is needs-based, goals-based, and based on products. And so there's 2 schools of thought in the finance world. One is what I call the accumulation theory, right? So that's the buy and hold, get a diversified portfolio of mutual funds, magic of compound interest, portfolio rebalancing, get out of debt, I won't name names, but those that really most of advice falls into that. But there's another side of the world called principles-based, what we call the accumulation method, right? Because it's not theory, because this is how wealth is created. And so, like, if you've ever read The Richest Man in Babylon, the 7 Cures for a Lean Purse, or the 5 Laws of Gold, that is the velocity method. And so in the velocity method, you hear things like velocity of money, which is an economic principle. You hear things like, so if most of your listeners invest for multifamilies, well, what's the goal of that? Cash flow. They don't invest for capital gains. Okay. You might get that, but your goal is cash flow. You want leverage. You want to be able to get more with less, by using leverage, other people's money, You want to be able to have, one of the things that people miss that I teach is they don't capitalize. They're too focused on investing sometimes. They don't build up capital. The number one problem I see is lack of capital on an individual level is the number one problem I found that face most people.
All right, lack of capital. I love that. When you talk about that lack of capital, and you kind of talk about the velocity of money and a couple other principles there as well, you kind of put in there. I know when we were talking before we hit record, we talked about, really not focusing so much on getting out of debt, but accumulating wealth, accumulating assets. And you mentioned the phrase where you talked about really looking at it more like a business, right? Thinking about the way you would run a company as opposed to just doing what a personal financial advisor might tell you to do. Tell me a little bit more about that approach.
So you are a business. I tell people, look, you're the CEO of your life. And one of the things that we teach is that, look, you can't control the economy. You can't control who's in the White House. You can't control any of that kind of stuff. But you can control what I call and what we call your personal economy, right? Which is your production and consumption as a household. So you're the CEO of your life. So in with money, you've got two roles. One of a producer, you have to make money, and then one of a steward. So once you get it, you've got to keep it, and you've got to make it work harder. So understanding that when you talk about debt, for example, there's good debt and bad debt. There's destructive debt and there's constructive debt. So if you pay for it, that's bad debt, right? But if you leverage to get an apartment complex or some single families or buy a business, that's good debt. But you have to take a business-like approach. So you have to manage cash flow. Most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow. Okay, and then the second thing that we teach is something called wealth transfer. Because see, most people think the key to growing their wealth, they think entrepreneurs and business owners are like, risk out there gunslingers and taking risks. They don't do that. You're trying to educate yourself so that you mitigate your risk to near zero. And so you're looking at, okay, if I put my money into a deal, you want to know how soon can I get it back plus, plus a profit, right? And so that's where you're looking at, you're saying, okay, what's the market? Or in business, it's like, what problem are you solving? And one of the things I talk to people about in business is that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to make, I got this from Dan Sullivan, what I call I hope I don't mess this up, the two entrepreneurial decisions. One is that you don't deserve any money. You will accept, no, you're 100% responsible for generating revenue for your household. Okay. And two is that you shouldn't expect any revenue unless you create value in the marketplace first, right? Money follows value. So if you want to make more money, you have to figure out how to create more value in the marketplace. And so that is the essence of capitalism that people have to embrace. It's not about profits and these greedy corporations. It's about you and I out here hustling, trying to create value so that people will seek what we're offering more than the money they have, that we've created enough value that there's a good exchange. I don't think a lot of people understand that. And that's true even if you work a job, you're still a CEO of your household and you're just selling your labor. You got to manage your cash flow. If you've got a side business, you should have two economies. You've got your household economy, and then the business falls under the asset column of your personal economy. And, it should be generating revenue up to your income column. If y'all are follow Rich Dad Poor, you know what I'm talking about. You should get a picture of the financial statements. So let me take a breath there, John, make sure I'm not off.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about those quadrants, right? We're talking about
Yeah,
how money, right? No,
right.
there's the income quadrant, there's the business quadrant, there's your passive investments, right? So really understanding all of those the ways to make money and understanding the role that you play. You talked about creating value. I want to recap a couple of things you said because I just
Yeah,
wrote it down. It's great. You said that there's destructive debt and constructive debt, and it really comes down to who's paying for it. If you're
right.
paying for it, then it's destructive, right? But if you can buy a cash flowing asset with residents, tenants that are going to pay down that debt on your behalf, that's great debt to have. I know that there are
Yes.
some folks who live and die by, I'm gonna say the name, Dave Ramsey,
Okay.
and folks like that who preach,
Since you said it,
all
I'll
debt
go
is
there.
bad debt.
Yes,
All
yes,
debt is
yes.
bad debt. And I think that, listen, depending on where you're starting from, I understand that position. If
Right.
you are deep in personal debt, yes, you should look at debt as a bad thing. But every wealthy person, every wealthy company in the world leverages debt. There's a
Yeah.
reason why. And you talked about treating our personal finances more like a business. If you are investing in any business and they only operate on cash, they would be doing a disservice to their investors, right? And their shareholders. And you have to understand debt from that perspective. And I know that you talk a lot about this on your show as well. As you kind of just bring more context there, can you also talk about kind of your podcast, the Practical Wealth Show, and how you actually help other investors and just really other, you mentioned family members, but just leaders of their household, how you help
Yeah.
them think about money and think about real estate investing?
Yeah. So one of the things that I try to teach is we talk about our principles of personal finance, is that I find, John, that there are gaps in coverage. So you could be making a lot of money as an investor, but I find people aren't saving enough money. They don't have the proper insurances. I had clients where I'm going over their finances. They don't have the right homeowners. Their auto insurance is not up to levels. They don't have an umbrella policy. So they're not playing what I call defense. They don't have disability insurance. They're underinsured with their life insurance. They'll say stuff like, "Well, I got all these properties, and if something happens to me, my wife will, she'll be all right. She can sell them, or she can collect the rents. She may not want to run the company, may not know how to run the company. All right, and so you have to create multi-generational wealth. So that's part of it. I find that most people are not liquid enough. We teach that you want to have 6 to 12 months or more of liquidity. Now, your first 90 days is your emergency fund, and don't go below that. Everything above that, we move into our fifth principle, which is velocity of money. And so one of the things when I work with people, I say, look, my job is not to tell you what to invest in. See, so I stopped doing that. My job is to make sure that, one, you're financially literate, you're saving 15 to 20% of your gross income, that we teach a principle called maximum protection, so you're protected. So because you can't have a plan that only works when the sun is shining, right?
Yeah.
Stuff happens, right? You get sick, you get emergency happens, you get sued, that's asset protection, the estate plan, you got to cover those things, and nobody talks about that stuff. They viewed it as a drain on their investing. Oh, they just want to be excited and invest, but you have to play defense first. You have to build a foundation. You have to capitalize. See, if you have money, you don't have to look for investments. If you're well capitalized, opportunities will find you. You don't even have to go looking. Okay. And so then what happens is, once you have capital, then you have to be financially literate, which is reading financial statements. And I tell people, it's your job to make yourself rich. See, Dave is great. Dave Bach, Dave Ramsey, Suze, Orman, all of those, they're great if you're like middle income and you just want to work, put your head in the sand and give money to a 401k. But if you want to be active, then what we teach is your job is to make yourself rich. Your job is to buy, because when I talk about investing, I talk about asset classes, right? So if you study rich people, see, folks, you got to study money. You got to read some biographies. You need to read, Millionaire Mind, or the Wealth Choice, Success Secrets of Black Millionaires by Dennis Kimbro. And you start studying. He asked Dennis Kimbro, asked his millionaires, well, how'd you get to be millionaires? 80% business owner, 30% real estate. Now I know that's 110, all right, but that's in the book, right? But success leaves clues. They ain't max out their 401k. They don't do any of that stuff. Okay. They ain't trying to get out of debt. They don't pay their houses off. They don't do any of that kind of stuff, because that's capital that you could be using to accelerate your wealth. See, rich people use debt as money. So, you know what I mean? And they will buy, because it takes a long time to save $100,000, but you can borrow it with good financials in 15 minutes, or raise it if you have a good performer, you know what you're doing. And I have one of my clients, so one of the things we teach is your number one investment is yourself in between your two ears, right? And so my 3 rules of investing are: invest in yourself, invest in what you can control, and don't chase returns, right? And so what happens is we were just we were doing a review call today, and he was talking about all the stuff he's got going on, and he what he did was he invested a $2,000 course on how to raise private capital. And that course has made him millions because he, at any given point, any deal he finds, he can get funded in like a week and a half from about 10, 12 different investors because he learned how to do that. And see, so what was that $2,000 investment? What fund or what investment can you put money into where you can get that kind of ROI? And that's, but the challenge is that the typical world tells you in the accumulation theory, you're not smart enough. You don't have the time, the temperament, or the training to manage your money. So in so many words, all of their advice is give your money to us. Let us lock it up for 30 years. Okay. Let us have it in this 401k for 30 years. And what I do for when I work with, I work primarily with business owners, with real estate investors, and people that aspire to the former. And they innately feel that the best place for my money is where I can get to it because I can invest in my business. But when they see other typical advisors, they're telling, oh, you need a solo 401k. Oh, you need to set up this SEP, or you need to put money here. And they don't have anybody that backs up what their gut feeling is. Well, Curtis backs that up. No, you need to go ahead and, go pay for this coaching course. If you'll do the work, it'll be the best investment you'll ever do. See, I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah, Curtis, I love you. You said something I think was really just telling and great, right? You said you don't really tell people what to do, right? You're not out there as an advisor telling them, hey, put 70% in stocks and this amount in alternative assets and all of that. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is really just helping them with the roadmap so they can understand the way money works and the way they can actually accumulate the wealth that they're trying to achieve. You also said that you have three.
Because when you have the money, your job, not to cut you off, is like I got a guy that I had him, he's like 23. I had him saving 15, 20 of his income. Next thing I know, he calls me, Curtis, I just bought an ATM. He was trying this and that, and then he had 3, then he had 8.
Mm-hmm.
And, so he's got 8 ATMs making $3,500 a month. And then he started buying notes, right? The only thing I did for him was, kind of pour into him mentally. And then I had him saving. So when the opportunity came up, he had the money.
So let's talk about that, right? Because you said you had 3 investing principles. You said 1, invest in yourself, 2, invest in things you can't control, and then 3, never chase a return. I think number 1 and 2, well, number 1 makes sense when you talk about education, right? Investing in your education. Number 2, when you say invest in things you can control, some folks will say you can't control anything. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what you mean when you say invest in things you can't control. And then the last one was never chase a return. Maybe give me a little more context on what you mean by that.
Okay. So let's take your listeners. You make money when you buy real estate, right? And so if you buy a apartment complex or commercial property, don't you buy it, you can improve the property and rents, add in vending machines, you drive the cash flow up, and now you can refinance it in 2 or 3 years and get your money back out.
Yep.
Were you able to influence and control that investment?
That's right. Yes.
Same thing with a business. I can control my marketing. I can control payroll. I can, systems to get more. We were in a tavern business. I found out once I started to understand inventory control, I bought some systems to keep people from giving away our liquor. And which they feel they had a constitutional right to steal my money. Right. So my family had like 3 bars in North Philly. And, so that kind of stuff. So there are things that you can control. Whereas if you have money in a mutual fund, you put $100 grand in the equities and it could be 95 by tomorrow morning. You have no only thing you control is whether you put in. You can't have influence over the performance of the investment. And so if you can't influence the outcome, it's not investing, it's speculating. Okay. And then don't chase returns is, so here's your goal. I think you have to start out with the end in mind, and that orders what you do, what I call your money rules. So we call it in our system being a cash flow near. All right. And so a cash flow near is we want you to, we call it getting to the FU position, right? So if you want to tell people FU, you're
I
free
think they
enough
got
that
it.
yeah, right. You can do what
Freedom
it is that,
Unlimited
right,
number. Your
right.
Freedom Unlimited number.
Yeah. And so your financial freedom number, I'll clean it up. And but that's based around cash flow. So I don't even focus on net worth. You can't eat equity. So you have these institutions, oh, I've got X amount of $1 billion on their assets, I got X or Y assets under management. That don't make you any money. That isn't, my job is to make my clients rich, not get AUM. And so, but I don't make you rich. You need to make yourself rich. Okay. I'm just making sure you don't do stupid stuff. And so what happens when I say don't chase returns? So if your goal is cash flow, passive income, twice your expenses, I want you to eliminate your non-preferred debt and to basically have a bulletproof financial game plan. So if your goal is cash flow, you want 10 grand a month or 20 grand a month, but I heard Bitcoin is going up, or I want to get gold, or I want to, you're running around chasing squirrels. And I ask people, so listen, how does that help you hit this objective of passive income greater than your expenses? Because you're chasing shiny objects. In the mutual fund world, when I did that, we used to call it rear view mirror investing. So you see Money Magazine that, this fund did 57% last year, and everybody would come out of the funds that they were in, invest in last year's winners, right? And so if you're chasing returns, and that's what I mean by chasing returns, you need to have principles, you need to have a game plan, you want to focus on cash flow, you want to run it like a business, you want to look at the numbers and make sure that they work. And so that's what you got to practice. Financial literacy is the ability to read numbers. Most people, like when I work with people in business or personal finance, I really get them to look at if I taught you on personal finance, it's easy. If I taught you for 5 minutes, I could draw you the rich dad, poor dad squares and tell you the story and trajectory of your life. I can do the same thing in a business when you look at your financials. So people are looking at the wrong stuff. And, the job of a business is for you to be economically independent. Even if you sold the business, you're still supposed to be rich. So.
Yes. Listen, you said
I
something,
get a bit
man.
hyped.
No. Listen, I love what you hit on, because when we think about it at a high level, we really have more control. And just to recap, I was asking about those 3 principles. We talked about the education yourself, so you can invest in yourself, so you can control the outcomes, and investing in things where you said you can control. You could think about it as where you can influence the outcome, and you have the ability to pivot, right? If you're looking at something, you don't like the results, you actually have the ability to go in and make adjustments, versus all your money's in a stock and you're just hoping that whoever the lead of that company is going to right the ship. If you are investing in real estate, you can look at the business plan and say, hey, let's go in and do X, Y, Z so we can force appreciation, so we can increase rents, things like that, where you have more control. And then the last piece was actually staying focused, not to chase a return, not to get excited about the next hot thing you read about, but actually staying to your principles, your investing principles, and investing based off of that. Speaking
Yeah.
of principles,
I've learned to say no to a lot of stuff. It's like, here's
yeah,
what I do. Here's my unique ability. Here's what I do. And there's like, I have a show like you. So I'm hearing all these great things every week. Like, nope. No. My number one investment is Curtis's businesses. Okay. I got to stay focused. Right.
yes.
And so, yeah.
And Curtis, you hit on this a couple of times, but I don't think we really directly called it out. But you also mentioned that you have 5 principles of personal finance. I don't think we actually, you mentioned the last one, I believe, and I don't think we actually called out what they are. So maybe you can walk us through that real quick.
Yeah. So when we work with somebody, we walk them through a process where we hit on each thing, and we have a process, a program called a personal financial snapshot. But the 5 principles of how we implement them are: principle 1 is saving, right? And so, because velocity starts with saving, you have to work and earn. And it is right out of The Richest Man in Babylon. Part of all you earn is yours to keep. Okay. And so our first goal is to save 15%, at least 15% or more of their gross income. All right. So let's say you work and you make $10,000 a month. Okay. So just use round numbers because I'm live and I don't feel like counting, right? So that would be $1,500 a month. I want you saving, okay? And hear this, your 401k don't count because that's not saving. Newsflash, okay? I'm talking about savings, safe, liquid, you have control, you have access to it, you can't lose money. It's liquid. You can get to it in right away or within like 3-4 days, and you can't go backwards. That's saving, okay? And most people don't have enough of that. So that's step one. The second principle is maximum protection, right? And so what that is you got to look at, so that is like looking at your auto and your home, and do you have liability coverage? A lot of your investors, for their personal stuff, and do you have the proper coverages for your business? So this is a team sport. So we incorporate a lot of the other professionals in our process, tax people, the property and casualty people that do your auto and home, and looking at that. We've got people that analyze that. We look at this, we refer people out to good estate planning, having the proper wills. Do you need a trust, asset protection? And we go over what entities do you have, and seeing, should you have one? Is it time, if you got an LLC, is it time to make an S Corp? If they will get an accounting involved. If need be, we look at, do you, so think about maximum protection means that if you were, let's say you knew your house was going to burn down and you had like not the minimum coverage, you didn't have full replacement cost, and you had a crystal ball, and you knew that you're going to have some event tomorrow, or you were going to get in an at-fault accident, which you want the minimum coverage you have or the maximum coverage that the insurance company is willing to give you. And so most people, when you ask to them that way, so I want the maximum coverage, they, with life insurance, most people don't, there's a formula for that. But let's say somebody said, well, I got, $250,000 worth of insurance. I got enough. I just want insurance for my daughter. I said, well, how old are you? She's like, I'm 41. I said, what do you make a year? I make, she didn't tell me. I didn't know what she made. I said, listen, so take wherever you make a year and multiply it by 20. That is how much life insurance you need. So most people are underinsured, okay? And so we help people figure out what their human life value is. You want to play defense. You got to set that first. The third principle is full replacement of assets at death, 100% replacement of assets at death. And so there's some insurance things that we use to teach people how to do that. But what you want to do is we're big on legacy, right? And so in creating liquidity in your estate. Now, I don't focus on that because I want you to live the best life you can today, but it has to be talked about. This is what I mean, John, when I say most people skip steps. Most advisors don't even do all that kind of stuff. They don't want to be bothered because their objective is assets under management, okay? And a lot of that stuff they don't get paid for, but these are the principles, because you got to make it, but you got to keep it, okay? And then you got to grow it, and you got to pass it on intact to your loved ones. And the fourth principle is liquidity. So what we want is 6 to 12 months or more. See, right now, with COVID and these things like that, so you got to plan for that. See, most people are too illiquid. And so what they'll do is this is where the getting out of debt problem is. I was telling clients, listen, if you got $100,000 you got $200,000 house, you got $100,000 in cash and $100,000 in debt. Are you in debt? See, and she goes, yeah. I says, no, you're not. You have debt. You have a liability, but that is a balance sheet neutral decision. See, because if you took your cash and paid the house off, you just made yourself poorer, right? Because you don't have money. All you did was transfer your wealth to the bank. Getting out of debt does not make you rich. I know some gurus that tell, get these turnkeys and pay your house off. No. Because what people don't get, here's another financial principle they don't teach in personal finance is, have you heard of opportunity cost?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Most people don't teach that. And right, so we teach it in the concept, we say, look, you finance everything you buy, right? So if you either pay cash, use other people's money, which is an interest charge for that. People understand that. But they don't understand that when you pay cash, that means you finance it, right? And so that means you're giving up money you could be earning. And there's a real cost to that. And so in the business world, they account for that. In personal finance, if you pay cash for a house, you're just saying, well, I don't have any payments. No, but if you had a $100,000 house, you just made 100% down payment. That's all you did. And so equity has no rate of return, right? So you want to have the liquidity. So even when you use other people's money, you want to have your money as a backup. You want to borrow out of what I call opportunity, not out of necessity, right? Because banks loan money to people that don't need it. So as you're making money, guys, you need to understand that your number one problem is lack of capital on the individual level. That is the fundamental problem that we solve, that we try to teach people. And then principle number 5 is the velocity method, which is you want to move money through assets, create with the emphasis on. So what we emphasize in our model is cash flow. Cash flow. So we track, what is your investment cash flow? What is your business cash flow? And then we measure that every year. And so to make sure that you're moving forward. We've had time, I have an interesting case study on that. But those are the 5 principles of personal finance. But the emphasis is on, and what do you do with that new cash flow? You save it, right? So if you get and you start generating $5,000 a month off your investments, well, you should be saving anywhere from 15 to, if not all of that, if you're, because you shouldn't adjust your lifestyle up automatically. There's something called Parkinson's law that says expenses rise to meet income. Okay. And so you don't need to go buy a new car or a new house right away because you had your first, good year, a couple of years. You're not financially free yet. And so
Yeah,
those are the 5 principles.
you said a couple things I want to just make sure we hit on. We're running short on time, but I want to make sure we hit on this, right? 1, 5 principles, as I wrote them down. So I shorthanded some of these, but 1 was savings, 2 was proper coverage or insurance, 3 was full replacement of assets, 4 was liquidity, and 5 was velocity. So understanding those principles of personal finance will put you in a better situation.
Absolutely.
I'm always thinking about the person listening who is maybe having a hard time coming to grips with the concepts, right? Maybe they're not they grasp the concept, but they might say, I hear you, Curtis, and I know that I'm better off not paying my house off. I'm better off keeping some of this debt, but it helps me to sleep at night better. What do you say when someone says that to you, that, hey, you know what? The peace of mind of being able to sleep at night without having this debt is better than having the debt.
Okay. I get that all the time. I have a couple of shows on that. So here's the thing. My wife is a real estate attorney. So if you pay your house off, let's go back to my example. You got $100,000 cash and $100,000 in debt. So you've now liquidated your capital to give your capital to the bank. So 1, that strengthens the bank position. When you're paying extra on your mortgage, you're making yourself easier to foreclose on. A lot of people don't get that. They think they're saving money in interest. Saving money in interest does not create wealth. Okay. And 2, let's say you paid your house off and you've got a $300,000 house you own free and clear. What if you have I'm from Philadelphia, so what if you have a Sandy, okay, and your house is like washed away from the hurricane and it's down the street? Where's that equity at now? It's not there, right? And so, the insurance may not want to pay because, you don't have flood insurance, and but if I have my house more, I've refinanced, I've got my cash in a safe liquid side fund, which I'll let you know if you want to know what that is. But where I'm getting 4 or 5%, and I can access my capital with a phone call while they're fighting over, was it wind damage, was it flood damage? I'm mailing you all the keys and I'm getting all my life. What if my property depreciates? What if I get disabled or lose my job? That you've lost control of the equity because you can't get to the equity because you no longer qualify for a mortgage. Whereas if you got a couple $100,000, you can pay for your mortgage for years if you become disabled or out of work. Whereas, people say, well, I got my house free and clear. Listen, it costs money to sleep indoors. Okay. So you're always going to have some type of housing expense. The question is, I'm safer with capital, so you can do with cash. You can do what you want. So if I got a $200,000 and $200,000 mortgage, I would rather pay my $2,000 a month payment and keep, and peel it off of my capital and keep control of my money. And so you got to look at both sides. See, that is what I call the scarcity mentality. Part of prosper economics is the first principle in prosper economics is think from a prosperous mindset. And so these are things like I don't like budgeting because it's focused on scarcity and fear-based hoarding. We teach people to forecast and tell your money where to go instead of where it went. So it's a bunch of, I take the opposite tack of what's out there. We could go 1,000 ways on that. But the main thing is that are you safer with your house paid off? I don't know. I mean, if you still got to light it, heat it, you still have to pay taxes on it. Try not having any money and your income is interrupted and you've got taxes due and you can't pay your taxes. You can still lose the house.
Yeah, you said it's easier to foreclose on if you were to pay your house off than if you didn't. And I know you just kind of talked about it a little bit more. I think that line might have stood out to some people saying, wait a minute.
So,
no,
all right. So let's say
pay my house off. How's
right.
it
We both, John has a $200,000 house. I got a $200,000 house. John has a 15-year mortgage and he sends extra payments. If you can still, I'm sure you can still get them not. Let's say I put 10,000 down and I got an interest only loan. So 5 years goes by, your mortgage balance is 150. Mine is still like 180 or so, 185. Our value goes down a little bit, right? And then we lose our jobs, right? So now I can't, and plus I've been saving my difference. So I've been pretending to save what you've been saving to the bank. I've been putting it in my savings account. So now I got 50, 60, $70,000 in cash. You got, $60,000 in equity. So now we lose our house or we lose our jobs. So now you've got $140,000 of loan balance on a $200,000 house. My loan balance is $190,000. So if the bank is coming to foreclose, who's going to get foreclosed on first?
Well, I guess me, because they have equity. They can recoup in that.
They can recoup it because equity is good for the bank. The equity strengthens the bank position. So I always remember this. I always tell people that I was a mortgage planner. I did mortgage for a couple of years, and right before the meltdown. And what's good for the bank is bad for you. So is equity good for the bank? Yes. Well, it is bad for you. Is sending extra money. When you send extra money to the bank, you're seeing you're getting out of debt. You're creating velocity for the bank. Remember I talked about the velocity of money. Money, all you're doing is giving it to them back faster so they can do what? Loan it out to somebody else. So why don't you? Here's the other thing. I get so many things running through my mind right now. Think about this. So because of inflation, your money will never be worth more than it is today. Right? And so don't you think banks know that? Why do you think you get a lower interest rate on a 15-year mortgage? Because they want your more valuable today dollars so that they can loan them back out to somebody else. So you need to pay them back. This is where you got to understand the Fed and what's going on. That's why you got to understand economics, right? And so if the Fed is printing money and just trying to destroy the purchasing power of a dollar, create inflation, then why wouldn't you give them back the monopoly money they're giving you and stretch that mortgage out and put your money to work and go lever up and go buy some more apartment building? That would be better.
Yeah, listen, I love that take and the perspective and the example you gave of that $200,000 house, one person who put more, made bigger payments, got more equity versus the person who maybe didn't do that. I think that's a great illustration because if worst case scenario happens, which by the way, that's what we're talking about, right? If everything is good, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The only thing is the opportunity cost that you lose from sending your money to the bank. But if the proverbial crap hits the fan, then in that situation, you may actually be better off because you're sitting on cash that you can use to continue to make payments or figure out whatever it is you're going to do. Let's just take the houses off the table completely. If we both lose the house, if you're sitting with $50,000 cash, you have some other moves you can make. If my $50,000 isn't in equity, but I still lose that property to the bank, well, now I have nothing to show for, all those payments and that additional capital that I've been able to make. So I think that's a really good illustration for the people who are thinking about sleeping at night and who are, don't like debt for that reason, it really could be a thing where the debt can help you depending on how you play it. So just think about it and play this back. And
Let me
obviously,
give
this
you a
may be a
definition
challenge
of
for
debt.
people.
Debt is a future obligation where the only way you have to pay for it is with money you have yet to earn. Okay. So that is using future earnings as collateral. So now if you have more collateral or more, like, so you got a house that's worth 200,000, you got 100,000 in debt. Well, you've got 100,000, you have collateral. You're not in debt. You have a liability. Debt is when you have more liabilities than asset. So people confuse debt and liabilities all the time, and they're two separate things. And so that's what I mean. If you're going to be financially free, you've got to understand money. The first, money has a language, and so if you want to learn a new language, you've got to learn the vocabulary. So you got to capital, cash on cash return, ROI, velocity. You've got to, learn a business owner's vocabulary.
I love it. I love it. Hey, thank you for clarifying that. Hey, Curtis, we're going to move on to our bullseye round. But before we do, please tell our listeners where they can check out your podcast.
So anywhere you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you can just Google Practical Wealth Show, and our show will come up, and you'll hear more about the madness that is Curtis.
All right, Curtis, let's transition. All right, first question here. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Oh, man. So I think, let me see, how much time do we have? I'm trying to think of my early, so for example, we had commercial properties. My dad used to buy the businesses. He didn't like real estate. He was more of a business guy. I'm his son. And so we would get bars. He wouldn't develop the second floor. Like, I don't want to get $800 a month when I can make $5,000 a week off the retail part of the thing. And in truth, we should have been doing both. So when I started to develop those, I didn't know anything about this art called property management, and getting your rents collected and that kind of stuff. So that was a nightmare where I've got somebody for 6-7 months, looking me in the face, living in my house, not paying me rent, So what I've learned from that, what we have now, I don't even think about managing. It's like, here you go. Just, make sure everything's all right, send me my check. So that is a skill set. And there's a bunch of different skill sets. And one of the things I realized is that here's what I like and here's what I'm good at. And all I'm going to do is focus in on that. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I use ClickFunnels for my website. What else do I like? I have this thing called, what's that thing called? I have a text thing. Well, I'll tell you at the end. It's called the text. One is called Me Mobile, and I have another one. I can't think of it right now. Okay. And I tell you, for a CRM, my favorite thing in the world is something called Less Annoying CRM.
All right, Less Annoying CRM.
Less Annoying CRM. It's $10 a month, and it is awesome. It integrates with MailChimp and Google Calendar, and I run my life on that. One of the mistakes that business people never get is they don't keep a list. They don't keep a database, and your business is your list, and so you have to. If I didn't have that, I'd have been out of business 15 years ago. I learned, once I meet a person, you don't come off my list, or either I die or you die, so.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. There's three, really. Money for Life by Jeffrey Reeves. They're both on the same topic because we teach something called infinite banking, but you've got to read it or you can't work with me. And then there's a new book that is a friend of mine. It's called Principle-Based Planning, that talks about what I just talked about. The 5 principles of personal finance is basically on that. So we actually give that to our clients.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Whole life insurance is not evil. So I was in a buy-term investor difference company, and I'm so pissed right now because I had my insurance license since I was 20, and I was told this particular thing is devil, it's evil. And I am so pissed because I lost like 15, 20 years of knowledge. And the second thing I would say is that when you're in business, one of the things, and I didn't really get this till about 4 or 5 years ago, I don't care what business you think you're not in that business. You're in the marketing of that thing, right? So you're in the marketing business. And understanding that changed everything for me.
Well, you certainly won't get any pushback from me on that point. All right. Hey, Curtis, give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
So I wake up and I've been really, I train, I did a accountability thing on this book called The 12-Week Year. And so I've condensed where a year is not a year. I do 12-week year. And so I focus daily on, here are the top 3, 4, 5, here are my 3 goals. And here are the 3 or 4 tactics that will drive me towards my goal. So I try to focus on the activity that will yield the results I want. So I try to put it in terms of, I want to serve X amount of people this quarter, and here are the reaching out methods that I need to do that. So what I do is I focus on the lead indicators of the tactics I need to do to make what I want to have happen, and not on the thing. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What are you curious about right now?
I am really curious about, it's all about my business, right? So I'm really intentional about becoming a better communicator. And also I have a book in my heart that I'm exploring how to get it out of me without me actually writing it. So, I want to talk it because as you hear, I like to talk, but I don't like sitting down typing.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of audiobooks right now, and lots of ways to make that happen. We actually just interviewed Max Keller, and his episode came out recently, and he talked about, he actually helps people publish books. So something I'll send to you, but it's a really good episode on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Well, listen, Curtis, I really enjoyed our conversation, and we talked a lot about just the principles of personal finance and how you've adjusted, or not adjusted, but how you kind of take a different approach from what many of your peers do when it comes to just the viewpoint. We talked about prosperity economics. We talked about the principles of investing, and you've given us a lot of good tips. One, I didn't catch exactly where you're from. So where are you based?
I'm from Philadelphia, PA. Okay. And I'm based just outside of Philly, but I grew up in Philly all my life.
All right.
And I went to school out of state, but yeah.
All right, so you're in Philly, right? You got to give me the best place to grab a bite in Philly.
So when people come to Philly, they go on the cheesesteak tour. So I'll give you my 2 favorite cheesesteak places, which is in South Philly, there's Geno's and Pat's. And I would say my favorite is Pat's. Okay. And Jim's Steaks on 4th and South Street down in South. We're both in South Philly. Those are mine. So if you're going to do the cheesesteak tour, my wife will give you 2 different answers, but those are my favorite.
All right. Pat's and Jim's are the ones you like. I love it. Love it. Well, listen, you gave us a
Philly thing, the cheesesteak.
Yes. Very well known for the cheesesteak.
Yes.
Lots of great information, Curtis. I mean, for listeners who want to get in touch, learn more about you, check out the podcast, what is the best way to reach out?
So check out the podcast. Also, if I have a report, so I talk fast, I said a lot, but I have a report on the velocity called Creating Wealth with the Velocity of Money, where we go a little bit deeper. And it's kind of something we highlighted from one of Kiyosaki's books, Who Took My Money, that really lays out the message that we're trying to get to when you get to the point where you're investing. And so you guys, if they'd like that, they can text, get this number right, 55444 to P Wealth. So, or text P Wealth, PWEALTH, P Wealth, to 55444. And also you can just check out our website at practicalwealthadvisors.com. But I would start with the show. I think the show you'll get the flavor of what we're talking about, and we try to interview people. So once we get your money up, here are some things that you can do with it. in the 4 asset classes: business, real estate, paper assets, and commodities. Those are the 4 things that you can invest in. So that's what we talk about in the show.
Listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Curtis. I really appreciate the conversation. I think for me, the highlight was giving that example on the $200,000 house and paying more in equity versus having that money kind of sitting in your bank account where you actually control how you manage it. I think that illustration is just really powerful for people to understand how to actually sleep at night and different ways to think about their money. You're the host of the Practical Wealth Show. It's anywhere you listen to podcasts. Curtis May, thank you again for coming on Target Market Insights, the Multifamily Marketing Show. We hope to see you again and talk to you again soon.
I hope so. Listen, thanks for having me. And go out there and make something happen positive today.